Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Imagine that after 27 years of happy marriage, you find out that your spouse has secretly used the free pass to cheat that you once gave as a joke. How do you deal with such pain, and is it possible to rebuild the broken trust? Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. Distrustful is a word I would never use to describe myself. Maybe tough, but never distrustful. My children, my friends, and especially my business partners know what a fair and balanced person I am, especially in a crisis situation. None of them could have imagined that everything inside me was destroyed while on the outside I maintained my normal appearance. But now that I think about it, the word incredulous seems pretty accurate. It would seem that after 27 years of marriage, you have seen everything, heard everything, and experienced everything. 2 children, Randy and John, are almost finished with college, 5 years of mortgage payments are left, and a consulting business that almost runs itself. You might think that I have everything, and I did until a couple of months ago. I won't bore you with the details of my life. I'll just say that I'm almost 50, my belly is starting to grow, my teeth are all in place, and my hair is almost all intact. You can call me Steve, but not distrustful, naive, stupid, or any of the dozen adjectives that are now appropriate. My wife Victoria is 10 months younger than me and looks like she's 30. We met in high school and got married shortly after my 21st birthday. She's an aerobics instructor at our local gym, which says a lot about her fitness. Are we happily married? Where is the word that comes to mind? But I still love her, or I think I do. How can you not love someone after 27 years? If you ask women if I am to blame for our problems, most will say yes, and maybe even a few men will agree. But most men will say that she should have gone through this years ago. This in question happened before our wedding. Like I said, we met in high school. Neither of us were athletes or cheerleaders, but we had a lot of friends. We became boyfriend and girlfriend sometime during the first half of senior year. We just became close, and apparently it worked out for us. There were no agreements, I just thought or expected that we were completely committed to each other. We both started attending a local 2-year college, and for the first time, I was planning our future. Like I said, we had a lot of friends, and we usually hung out as a group. A math test was coming up, and I needed an A to maintain my GPA at 3.75 to keep my bright future scholarship. It was Friday night, and I was begging to go out so I could spend the night and just make sure I was okay. I decided that if I put my mind to it, I could finish studying or watch TV on Saturday or Sunday. I think I knew this better than I thought because just after 9 p.m., I was done and felt damn good. I still had time to catch up with the group at college, so I hit the road. I crossed out the first 2 spots, but recognized 2 friends' cars in the 3rd spot's parking lot. It was dark, and it took my eyes a couple of minutes to fully adjust. I walked up to the bar, took a drink, and started looking for Vicky, as I like to call her. I finally saw my friend's table, but not Vicky. 2 minutes later, I found her on the dance floor with some strange guy. When the song ended, I finished my drink, put down the empty can, and turned to leave. When the music started playing again, they started swaying to the music. This suited me for all of 30 seconds. This continued until he crossed the line of what was permitted. The rest was kind of a blur. There was a fight. "Steve, what's your problem?" Vicky screamed at me as we all went outside. "I'm a big girl and I can take care of myself," was her curt response. "Well then why didn't you care, and who the hell was this guy?" I screamed, perhaps too loudly. "We take psychology classes together and we're friends." "Vicky, friends don't sleep with another guy's girlfriend." I guess it wasn't the smartest thing to say because it turned into a full-blown argument. Things were said on both sides that shouldn't have been said, and she ended up throwing my ring at me while I was leaving. Then I did what every 20-year-old man would do if he got hurt. I found a man who bought me a case of beer and slept with the first girl who said yes to me. I spent Friday evening, most of Saturday, and Sunday morning drunk. Well, sick would be a better word for it. The second worst thing about that weekend was that I didn't quite do well on the test on Monday and got a low B. Most of all, I was angry with myself. Rumors about my weekend reached Victoria, and she refused to even talk to me. She said we were done and that I should leave her alone. It took me a month before she even spoke to me, and that was after I had bribed all of her friends to plead my case. We met on neutral ground in the college student union. I begged, damn it, I begged for another chance. "Steve, you slept with Becky," she screamed at me. "I know, but would you believe that I don't even remember how it happened?" "A probable story," she threw back at me. "This is true. I don't remember much from Friday or Saturday night, and I'm still trying to forget Sunday morning, throwing up in the bathroom, Mom yelling at me," I said, trying to make her feel sorry for me. "I think I went a little crazy when I saw him touching you." "So now all of this is my fault?" she asked. "Listen, if his hands were where they were supposed to be, none of this would have happened. Steve, if you hadn't gone crazy and slept with Becky, we'd still be together." "Vicky, did you sleep with him?" She flushed at these words. "Unlike some, I have self-control," she shouted, standing up. "Well, your good friend says he did it. He tells everyone he beat me up and slept with my girlfriend." "You're lying," she said, sitting back down. We spent the next half hour hardly saying a word. I kept apologizing, and she finally stopped calling me names. Vicky said that maybe she really shouldn't have allowed him too much, but that doesn't justify my actions. It took almost a week of persuasion for her to almost forgive me. She agreed to meet the next weekend but said we weren't together. After 2 months, I was able to convince her to become my girlfriend again. "You owe me," is how she put it. "If I ever, and I mean ever, screw up, I'll have a free pass. Understand?" Hell, I would have agreed to anything to get her back and thought I was safe, at least until I screwed up again, which, to my proud satisfaction, never happened again. We got married 2 years later and moved into an apartment above her parents' garage. We both graduated from college and took entry-level jobs, starting our lives together. You could say we were a typical average couple who loved each other and were happy and content. Life continued in this way for more than 20 years. Life was good, that's the best description. We were in our groove, and when Vicky wanted to quit her job and become an aerobics instructor, I didn't mind. She and her friend Sue taught 4 classes a week, and she proudly declared that she was in the best shape of her life. For me, it was great. You'd think that after more than 25 years, I'd be tired. Tired of making love to the same woman night after night. Well, I'm not tired. It may not have been night after night anymore, and we had slowed down over the years, but I still found her attractive. To me, she was still the girl I fell in love with. "Steve, step aside so I can change," she would say, pushing me away most evenings. "If you want dinner, you'll have to let me change." "Let's skip dinner, take a shower, and go to bed," I told her. "And I have 20-year-old breasts that aren't hanging. I'm hungry and I'm definitely not going to skip dinner. Maybe with luck, we'll have some fun later, but right now, I'm hungry, and you know how irritable I get if I don't eat." She was right. Vicky, like our daughter, became irritable if they didn't eat or went hungry for a long time. I had no problem skipping meals. As always, I had a beer with dinner, and she chose a Crystal Light. I suggested a glass of wine before bed, but Vicky said she had already flossed and brushed her teeth, so my plans for wine and candles were dashed. "Steve, you don't need to coax me with wine and candles or get me drunk unless you have something new in mind that you know I won't like." "Honey, I wouldn't do that," I said, smiling. "You forget I know you," she was right. We knew each other too well. However, every now and then, I did something that surprised even her. These cases have been rare lately, but I always tried to add a little variety. "I can't get rid of this fat on my sides. I'm thinking about liposuction to tighten them," she said, looking in the mirror. Sue did this last year and was back in class 4 days later. "Do you think I should do this?" "Honey, you're perfect," I said, patting the bed for her to sit next to me. "Steve, I might actually do a little lipo here and there and maybe tighten them up a little," she said, holding up her small breasts. "Love, no matter how many surgeries you have, you will never look like you're 20. To me, you're a fantastic woman I've had in my bedroom this week." "Steve, I'm the only woman who's been in this bedroom in the last 20 years, she said, hands on her hips. "So much the better." She did, and at my age, I was happy with what I had. I've known some guys who were lucky enough to get into bed once a week. Steve, Sue and I are going to Tampa next weekend for recertification, she said over dinner the other day. I'll try to get certified as a Pilates instructor and Sue is looking at spinning. We're leaving Friday afternoon and will probably be back late Sunday. It won't be cheap, but I have no choice. Do you want me to come with you? I asked, already knowing her answer. Do you want to sit around while we're in class all afternoon? Well, at least we could have dinner together. Steve, we'll probably have dinner with the rest of the group, but if you want to go, I'll be glad to. Let's see if it's a weekend for a bachelor or a couple of hours on the road to watch a crowd of beautiful instructors parading in their roles, I said, rubbing my chin. Will they be wearing underwear during class? At this point, Vicky threw her napkin at me, calling me an idiot. Have fun and see you on Sunday. I was hoping for a nice night on Wednesday or Thursday before she left, but I was busy on Wednesday, and she was still getting ready and running errands on Thursday. I frowned a little. She told me to get over it and that I would survive until she returned. Make sure to call me on Friday when you get there and contact me over the weekend. Don't worry, but I'll probably call early because I don't know when we'll be back. Tonight, since we don't have to go anywhere, Sue wants to have a blast this weekend. I can imagine it now, a couple of middle-aged women trying to keep up with the young people, I said, but soon regretted it. What do you mean? Do you think I'm old and it's time for me to get a stick? I can still have as much fun as anyone else, and don't forget it, was her rather harsh reply. She called me before they left on Friday and right after they arrived and got settled. The hotel was right across from the convention center, and she said there were a lot of people there, and she was really glad they went. I'll call you on Saturday during the day. If I don't get through, I'll leave a message. I love you, she said, ending the conversation. Now, what should I do until Sunday evening? I occupied myself with work on Friday night and made plans to have dinner with Tim, Sue's husband, on Saturday night. We shouldn't both be sitting at home while our wives are having fun, I thought. We ate dinner at Hooters and even stopped at another bar before calling it a night around 11 o'clock. The voicemail at home had a message from Vicky saying she would call on Sunday before she left. I didn't sleep well on Saturday night. Sleeping alone in our big bed with no one around felt strange. More than once, I reached out my hand expecting to find Vicky, but found only emptiness. At least she'll be around tomorrow. I fell asleep with a smile on my face. I didn't hear from Vicky until almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're on our way. See you in a couple of hours. Love you, was all she said. I was going to ask how she liked it, but decided it could be discussed when she got back. I pulled out a couple of steaks, peeled 2 white potatoes, and mixed up a salad while I kept an eye on the time. The potatoes were already in the oven, the table was set, and I had just taken the salad out of the refrigerator when Vicky came in. She came over, kissed me, and told me she was going to unpack, take a quick shower, and would be ready in about 20 minutes. Ideally, this was just enough time to get the steaks on the grill while the potatoes were done. I took out a bottle of wine, opened it, and poured a glass for each of us. I had my first glass while I was busy with the steaks and had just finished setting the table when Vicky returned. Everything looks great, she said, sitting down and taking a sip of wine and helping herself to a salad. She said she was recertified in aerobics and Pilates, but Sue ultimately decided not to take up spinning. They were on the move all day, attending lectures or practical classes. Looks like you had a good time. Did you close the bars on Friday and Saturday night? Sue did, but not me, she said, looking at me as she ate her steak. Were you too tired? No, I was just doing other things, she said, taking another glass of wine. We spent the next 2 hours talking about how she spent her time and finally what I did all weekend, including my dinner at Hooters. It was almost 9:30 in the evening when we went upstairs to bed. I took a quick shower to wash away the barbecue smell and was just finishing brushing my teeth when I noticed Vicky was already in bed. Today, I'll be lucky, I thought, accelerating. Steve, we need to talk for a minute, she said, sitting up in bed. Oh, I exclaimed. Can it wait until we're done? We need to do this now, she said, looking at me. Okay, hurry up. This hasn't happened for a long time, and I don't want to lose the mood, I said, smiling at her, but she didn't smile back. I used my free pass this weekend, she said, waiting for my answer. Honey, I don't care what you bought. Let's finish this, and then we can talk about your shopping. Steve, I used my free pass. Can you hear me? Free pass. What free pass, Vicky? I don't understand what kind of free pass you're talking about, I said, still not understanding what she was talking about. You gave it to me 27 years ago. Free pass, she repeated. The words were running through my head, but I still couldn't understand until the phrase 27 years ago hit me. This is some kind of joke, isn't it? The only free pass I remembered is the stupid thing I said a million years ago for you to come back. That's not what we're talking about, is it? Now I started to get seriously worried. When you slept with that Becky girl, you said I had a get-out-of-jail-free card, remember? Vic, it was a long time ago, before our wedding, I said, looking at her and feeling myself tense. Well, I used it this weekend, she replied, as if she were telling me she had bought a dozen eggs or made an appointment for a haircut. Vic, this isn't funny. This isn't even worth a joke, I said, getting out of bed and walking over to her side. She moved away from me because when I called her Vic, she knew I was angry. Steve, you know I love you, right? Forget about the nonsense with love. What have you done? I slept with someone this weekend and took advantage of the free pass you gave me, she said, as I darted back and forth between the bed and the bathroom. I didn't plan this. It just happened. You would have realized that if we had gone further tonight, she said, holding onto the blanket. Jesus, damn it, I blurted out. For the first time since we started dating, I wanted to hit her, clenching my fists. Are you crazy? I said that to get you back. I never meant it seriously. So you deceived me then? Vic, I would say anything to get you back, but I never expected you to keep it like a damn check, especially after we got married. Damn it, doesn't the word cheating mean anything to you? Like what you did to Becky? Vicky, we weren't even married then. I haven't even thought about it since we got married. But apparently, you can't say the same. Or is this not the first time you've cheated on me? Steve, that was the only time, and you know why I got a free pass, she said. The more she talked, the angrier I became. What were you doing, drinking pure alcohol that fried your brains in Tampa? I said, pulling on shorts and a t-shirt. The mood was completely ruined. As soon as she began to explain her actions, I said, I need to get away from you before I do something I regret, throwing on my old sneakers and walking out of the room and down the stairs as she yelled at me to stop. I probably wasn't in any condition to drive, but I needed to get away. I didn't even think that my Kia could move so abruptly, but it happened. 20 minutes later, I realized two things. Firstly, Vicky and I had a serious problem, and secondly, I had no idea where I was. It looked like I was still in Florida, but I didn't know exactly where. It took me another 15 minutes to realize where I was, but I definitely didn't want to go home. I stopped at Denny's and ordered a cup of coffee. I forgot my wallet and only had a $5 in the car, so breakfast was out. By 2 o'clock in the morning, I was tired, but I didn't want to go home and run into her. I was within 5 seconds of hitting my wife. What does it say? Chickens come home at night. Well, I'm not a chicken, and this situation won't go away quietly into the night. She had crossed the line for the first time in our marriage, and I didn't know what to do now. She cheated, no matter what she called it, and her free pass due to a drunken affair 27 years ago didn't matter either. If Steve hadn't just wanted intimacy tonight, none of this would have happened, Vicky thought to herself. I pulled this free passage story out of nowhere when I realized I might get caught. Sue screamed at me the whole way home, telling me how stupid I was to risk our marriage. I didn't plan to cheat on Steve, it just happened, or so I told myself. We met David at a party on Friday night. He was at our table, and after the introductions, we started having fun. David was one of the Pilates instructors, and when I said I planned to get certified this weekend, we had a common topic of conversation. When Sue and I went to the toilet, we were like two teenage girls. What a handsome guy, Sue said, fixing her makeup. Great figure, charisma, and everything. If I weren't married, I would try him out. You know what they say about black guys, she laughed. Everyone had a great time on Friday night. Alcohol flowed like a river, we danced and got to know each other better. David guessed we were both around 32, and I said he was pretty close, while Sue rolled her eyes. He said he had just turned 29 and was single. We both wore wedding rings, so he knew we were married, but he didn't make a big deal out of it. We probably had too much to drink, and I made a bet with Sue that I could get him interested. I bet you $5 that I can get him interested without even touching him, I told her. She accepted the bet, and I got down to business. We had a couple more drinks, and I continued to flirt with him relentlessly. When he asked me for another dance, I winked at Sue as he pulled me onto the dance floor. The song ended, and we returned to our table. Girls, we need to wrap things up. We have a big day tomorrow, Sue told us both. Big is the word of the night, I thought, agreeing with her. David walked us to our rooms and told us he would see us tomorrow in class. We went inside. I screamed and laughed as soon as I closed the door. Sue and I quickly ate breakfast on Saturday morning. Our first classes started at 8:30, and we needed to get moving. We joked with each other about the previous evening, but in the morning, it was time to return to reality. I didn't see David at dinner, but he found us around 7:30. We hung out with a group from another class. When he approached, I smiled at him, and he gave me a big smile back. This is how our evening together began. By 9:30, Sue said that several of them were going to another club and asked if I wanted to join. Not today, I said, refusing. I'm tired. My legs are still sore from all that stretching. Okay, see you later, she said, and the 6 of them set off. It was just David, 2 other people, and myself at our table. We ordered several slices of cheesecake and a bottle of wine. We spent the next hour eating, talking, and drinking 2 bottles of wine. When we hit the dance floor, it was like yesterday, only without the teasing. How we ended up in his room is still unclear. The only thing I remember is David taking me to his room. Can we do this again? Asked David. Never again. It was a one-time thing that shouldn't have happened, I said and went back to my room. Where the hell have you been all night? Sue shouted at me. You have 2 messages on your cell phone from Steve last night. I sat down on the bed and covered my face with my hands. Please tell me you didn't spend the night with David, Vicky, she said, looking at me. Oh my God, you did it. Are you crazy? What were you thinking? I didn't think. We drank a couple of bottles of wine and ended up in his room. Sue, just don't say a word to anyone and maybe I'll get through this if I'm lucky. I should have gone to that other club with you, I said out loud. I took a warm bath and washed myself half a dozen times before packing. We went downstairs and had breakfast. We then returned to the center to collect our certificates. We hit the road 2 hours later, and I listened to Sue nagging me the whole way while asking me for details. I called Steve and told him we were coming back and kept the conversation short. Are you going to tell him? Only if he notices something. I hope you're right. Steve doesn't strike me as someone who can forgive. Then it dawned on me. He wasn't like that, but I was. I forgave him years ago and told him he owed me a free pass if I ever did anything really stupid, and that definitely fit the bill. I've never used it, and if he finds out, I'll use my get-out-of-jail card. He would be furious, but I forgave him, and I only prayed that he would do the same. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was knocking on Tim and Sue's door. After 10 minutes of ringing and knocking on their door, the lights came on in the living room. A tired Tim looked out the window and opened the front door. Steve, do you realize what time it is? Somewhere around 3. I need to talk to Sue now. Can it wait until morning? She's sleeping upstairs. Tim, if it weren't so important, I wouldn't come at this time. Okay, come in. I'll go and wake her up, he said, holding the door open as we walked into the living room. I'll go and wake her up. A couple of minutes later, Sue came downstairs in her robe, followed by Tim. Honey, I can handle it. Why don't you go back to bed? You're kidding, right? Our neighbor comes here at 3 in the morning to talk to my wife, and you tell me to go back to bed? Come on, Steve, lay it out like it is. Sue, I want to know what the hell happened this weekend in Tampa. Steve, I don't know what you mean. Sue, I know Vicky cheated on me. Were you in on it too? Tim was now all ears and everything as he stood up looking at Sue. Tim, I didn't do anything. You have to trust me, she said, knowing things were getting out of control. Steve, you should have discussed this with Vicky, not me. That's how it started, but I don't want to end up in jail for domestic violence. That's why I'm here. Sue, what the hell happened this weekend? It's time you told us what happened. Tim started to get angry. Tim, I didn't do anything I'm ashamed of except drink too much. Sue, did Vicky plan this? How long has she known this guy? When did you find out about this, and why didn't you stop her? Wait, give me a chance to answer some of your questions. First of all, this wasn't planned. We met this guy on Friday night, made a stupid bet, and Vicky flirted with him, that's all. We were in class on Saturday all day and had dinner with a few people we met. We didn't see him again until 7:30 in the evening. After that, things got a little blurry, and I went to another club in the hotel and she stayed with this guy and several others. Steve, when I returned, she was gone. I returned to my room and passed out 10 minutes later. I didn't see her until Sunday morning. Sue, why did you leave her alone? Steve, how the hell did I know she would end up in this situation? She just came back to the room and said she did something stupid, that's all. Stupid is putting it mildly. What did he even look like? When Sue described him, I became even angrier, if that was possible. Steve, Vicky would never do this if she was sober. She really loved you, she tried to smooth things over. She says she doesn't even remember how she ended up in his room, but she got there. She should have stayed with you and not drunk so much wine, I objected to her. Sue, I'm sorry. It's not your fault that I have such a cheating wife. Steve, Vicky's not like that. She drank too much, and the guy took advantage of her. I'm not saying it's right, but she didn't just pick someone out of a crowd and go to bed with him. I had heard enough and apologized for disturbing them so late at night. Tim told me not to freak out and that things would look different in the morning. The last I heard was him asking Sue what exactly she was doing, and it seemed neither of us were going to sleep that night. When I finally returned home, I found Vicky asleep on the sofa in her robe. I left her there and went up to our bedroom to get at least a little sleep before work. When the alarm went off at 6 o'clock in the morning, I had to remember where I was. I think I only slept a couple of hours, but I was too exhausted to know for sure. A quick shower and shave made me almost human. I got dressed and went downstairs, finding Vicky still sleeping. I didn't want to talk to her, so I just left, grabbed a sandwich and a large coffee from McDonald's, and headed to work. In 5 minutes, I was eating at my desk and checking my calendar when calls started coming in on my cell phone, all from Vicky. I listened to a few messages she left before deleting them. I needed to understand what was on her mind this morning, and I didn't want to hear another word about that damn free pass. For me, it was irrelevant and non-existent, at least not after we said I do at our wedding. By 4:30, I realized that I had lost the whole day. I kept going over in my mind everything that Vicky and Sue had told me yesterday. I really didn't want to get involved with her tonight, but it seemed like I had no choice. I wasn't as angry as I was last night, but that could change at any moment. The horns of the cars behind me told me that I was still distracted because I was driving 25 miles per hour in a 40 miles per hour zone. When I turned onto our street, I regretted that I hadn't driven longer, but I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to deal with it. Vicky was waiting for me when I entered the kitchen from the garage. She didn't rush toward me, she just sat at the table looking at me. I knew that Sue had probably called her in the morning, and since I didn't call her back, she had no idea about my mood. I put down my briefcase, took a beer from the refrigerator, and sat down at the table opposite her. I said nothing, just took a long sip from the can, placed it on the table, and looked at her. I waited for her to start. Steve, I'm so sorry. If I could undo everything that happened this weekend, I would, she said, waiting for me to say something. I drank too much and didn't know what I was doing or with whom. By Sunday morning, I realized what had happened and rushed to my room. I don't remember much after Sue left. We just finished a couple of bottles of wine. I phrased the next couple of questions very carefully. Why didn't you go with Sue? She told me about your stupid game on Friday night. If I were him, I would think that you were flirting with me and that you didn't care that you were married, Vicky. Steve, it was just a kid's joke. We were exchanging compliments, and he was making me feel better by saying he thought I was 32. I just wanted to see if I could still get a man's attention. I wasn't planning on having intimacy with him. I just wanted to see if I could interest him, that's all. Well, apparently it worked, I said ironically. Steve, it wasn't like I egged him on Saturday. You can ask Sue, she was there. Only until she left and you went up to his room, I said through clenched teeth. Vicky started crying and kept saying she was sorry, but I was too angry for it to matter at that moment. I didn't know how it would all end, but now I didn't even want to look at her. We cooked something for dinner, but neither of us was particularly hungry. I had already had 2 beers before dinner and was having a hard time stopping there. I wanted the numbness that alcohol gives, but it didn't solve our problem, and I didn't know what else could be done. When we went to bed, Vicky tried to cover herself with a blanket. When she laid down in bed, she tried to kiss me, but I pulled away. We lived in the same house and spoke only when absolutely necessary. It didn't even feel like a brother-sister relationship because even siblings talk. It didn't get any better, it just got worse. On Thursday, I returned home to find Vicky quite drunk. From the empty bottle on the table, I realized that she had started drinking a long time ago. She was still wearing her leggings from her aerobics class and had a towel around her neck. Would you like a drink? She asked, downing the rest of her glass before moving onto the bottle she had just opened. She poured half a glass and leaned back into her chair. I said, "Would you like a drink?" she repeated, now slurring. "I think you've already drunk for both of us," I said, setting my briefcase on the table and waiting for her to fall from her chair. "As you wish," she replied, drinking half the glass. "You'll get sick and throw up everything, so what do you care about? Why don't you be a good little husband and make us something to eat? I don't think I can stand, and I don't think I should be near a fire right now. Maybe I'll burp and set the house on fire," she said, now laughing. "I hate stupid drunks," I muttered to myself as I went upstairs to change out of my work clothes. I didn't even notice that Vicky was somehow able to follow me upstairs. As I stood there in shorts, she appeared at the door. I muttered something about drunk and stupid women. "What happened? Lack of courage?" she provoked me as I pulled on my shorts. "Why don't you sober up?" "You're awfully drunk," I said, walking past her. "It didn't seem like it to David," she retorted. "Shut up. What happened? Are you still offended by your wounded pride, little man?" she mocked, leaning against the wall. "Do you want to know all the sordid details of that night?" "I don't remember much, but I can guess what happened," she said, downing the rest of her drink. "Now, let's see where I heard those exact words. Oh yeah, the night you slept with Becky, remember?" "Oh, but the truth is, you don't remember either." "It's a shame we couldn't swap stories about what happened," she said, throwing her glass at the wall where it broke. "But I think you forgot about that day off, but I didn't." Vicky went into the guest bedroom and slammed the door. "Vicky, open the damn door!" I shouted, but she didn't answer. I knocked on the door, but she screamed through the door for me to leave her alone. So I did what any mature adult does. I got drunk. Well, actually no, but I did drink 4 beers. I never saw Vicky until I went to work the next morning. The bedroom door was still locked, and I thought she had gotten some sleep from the night before. I've never seen her this drunk in the last 20-odd years, but over the past few months, we've both started drinking more and more. Nothing was decided. Hell, we even stopped talking to each other and sleeping in the same room. Our kids noticed what was going on, and more than once I heard her on the phone yelling at Randy or John to stay out of her business. "Steve, I thought you should know that Vicky got fired from the gym today." "She showed up drunk again and got fired," Sue said when she called me at work. "Vicky seems to have lost a lot of weight, and she looked terrible this morning. Have you resolved your problems yet?" "Problems cannot be solved unless we talk, and we haven't been doing that much lately," I answered her. "Every time we start, one of us gets angry and we end up fighting. Things are not going well for us right now. I wouldn't want you to get divorced because of a stupid drunken mistake. If we can help, call," she said. I thanked her and hung up. As always, When I got home that evening, Vicky was drunk as hell. "I quit my job today," she said, spinning her glass on the table and not even looking at me. "You mean you got fired today for drinking at the gym?" was my response. "I was fired. I left. It doesn't matter. Don't worry, I'll find something else. I can always work behind the bar, I'm already pretty good at it," she said, laughing. "Can't you stay sober for just one night?" "What for?" "It makes me feel good, like I don't have any worries." "What could be better?" "How about a normal marriage? Do you still remember what it is, or should I remind you how it was?" "Yes, that's what we had between Becky and the black snake," she muttered before lowering her head to the table. After that, she didn't move. I don't know if she fell asleep or lost consciousness. Finally, I picked her up, carried her upstairs, and laid her on her bed. Then I went downstairs and poured all the alcohol we had in the house down the sink. "Everything ends tonight," I told myself. "Either we improve our relationship or it's all over. I'm no longer in the mood to raise a baby." It was a little after 9 in the morning when I finally woke up, still wearing the clothes I had worn the day before. I didn't even remember going to bed in my bed. My head was pounding, and my stomach was cramping. Luckily, I didn't eat yesterday, so I didn't have anything to throw up. My shirt stank of sweat and alcohol. I got out of bed, took off my clothes, and got into the shower. The water did not immediately begin to revive me. Like every day at this time, I told myself that I would no longer drink and somehow improve my life. "I look like crap," I told myself, looking in the mirror. I thought about getting on the scale but decided I didn't want to know how much weight I'd lost. My clothes were now hanging on me, but that was my least problem. Like yesterday, the day before yesterday, and the day before, I had nothing to do today. I was finally fired from the gym because I either showed up drunk or didn't show up at all. I didn't blame them, I blamed myself. I did one stupid thing after another, and they all merged into one whole. I wanted to stop, I really wanted to, but I just didn't know where to even start. My marriage, what was left of it, was in serious trouble, and my life was complete nonsense. I went downstairs and found Steve at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper. I didn't want to face him. I didn't know what to tell him, and sobriety only made the pain worse. "The coffee's ready, and there are pancakes in the pan. I put them on low heat, so they're still warm," he said, holding out the second cup and glancing at the headlines. Vicky had lost at least 10 pounds, and her face was beginning to take on a gaunt look. She took a plate and put 3 pancakes on it. I stood up and took the butter and syrup for her. She ate in silence, glancing at me from time to time. When I took the third cup of coffee and put down the newspaper, she finally said something. "Why aren't you at work today?" "I took a week off to work on a personal problem, if you're interested. I took you upstairs when you passed out last night." She continued to eat. I got up, poured her a hot cup of coffee, and took out milk and sugar. Vicky wrapped both hands around the cup, blowing on the coffee before downing it in one gulp. "Another cup," she said, and she rejoined the world of the living. "Just so you know, there is not a drop of alcohol in the house. Everything is poured down the sink or broken in the trash. If you're able, we need to go grocery shopping this morning because there's nothing to eat at home unless you like snacks and chips," I told her, trying to get some kind of reaction from her. "Give me a few minutes and we can go," she said, looking at me, more like pleading. The store was almost empty, which was quite nice. We took a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. Most of the meats I chose could be grilled to avoid heating up the house. I haven't spent $300 on food in a long time, but we haven't done much cooking in our house for the past month. We spent almost 2 hours there. Our baskets contained only diet sodas and fruit juices, the strongest drinks. After we put the groceries away, I made us both sandwiches and poured a can of soda each. We ate on the terrace, and I tried to get a good look at Vicky. She had lost weight and looked a little worse than usual. The drinking probably took its toll. "Do you want to talk now or later?" I asked. "Because we will talk one way or another. Give me a minute to use the restroom and I'll be back," she said, heading toward the glass patio door. "If you're looking for a bottle of vodka, it's long gone, Steve. I just need to go to the bathroom and I'll be back." "Okay," I replied. 5 minutes later, she returned, still sober. Vic, what do you want to do? We can try to make things right, or we can go our separate ways. One of two things has to happen this week. Steve, do you still want me back after everything that happened? We won't know until we see what's left. In that case, I want to try to save our marriage, no matter how difficult it may be. Vic, my only request is that there be no more lies. I know some of what happened, but not everything. The only thing I know for sure is that I don't want to know all the details. Our marriage can't handle this. I'm not sure it will survive anyway, I said as Vicky started crying. Now, start from the beginning, Friday night, and if I have any questions, I will stop you. She started talking slowly enough for me to chime in with questions. I couldn't help myself when she started describing David, and I needed a break when she started talking about the bet with Sue. It looked like two stupid teenagers playing truth or dare. The only difference is that they were grown women and should have known better. Steve, this was the first time we've ever done something like this. Well, it looks like David isn't the only one interested. Steve was right and I told him so, but it only made him angrier. Am I no longer satisfying you? Am I that bad in bed, or are you just bored after 27 years? Apparently, you decided to diversify our marriage. It's a pity that it's not with me. Steve, I love you and I still like you in bed. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about David, but I didn't plan or even think about it. This did not console him. I don't know what could at this moment. When Vicky started talking about Saturday and got to the point where Sue left, I said I needed a break. Vicky didn't know how much I wanted to know, so she was probably trying to skip over as many details as possible. Vicky knew that I would soon realize that she was not as drunk as she first said. She probably thought about lying but realized that if I caught her doing it this time, we would definitely have broken up. Vicky told me about ordering another bottle of wine and dessert. She cut down on the details, however, when she said that they ended up in his room, I stopped her. What do you mean you ended up in his room? Did you go? Did he carry you? His room was next to yours and you went there by mistake, Steve. He led and I followed. I was very drunk and didn't realize it was his room until we got there. In other words, he didn't force you in any way. You went voluntarily. If you put it that way, then yes. Well, apparently you got what you wanted. But there is still a question that I don't understand. When did you finally realize that this was something you shouldn't have done? Surely by midnight, you should have sobered up enough to know what you were doing. Sue said you didn't come back to the room until 8:30 in the morning. Vicky began to sob openly. I just got my answer, I said as I walked away. I think she was trying to say that she was sorry, but all I heard was sobbing and crying coming from her mouth. I just wished I hadn't poured out all the alcohol. I could use a strong drink right now. I avoided her for the next 3 hours. I put 2 potatoes in the oven, quickly made a salad, and selected 2 steaks to grill. She must have been in her new room because I had to call her from upstairs to tell her everything was on the table. We ate in silence, as we had every evening for the past few weeks, but at least she was sober. I thought about dessert but was no longer interested. Did you like it? I asked suddenly. When she didn't look up or answer, I got my answer. I was going to give her another chance when she first spoke. Was Becky better than me? She must have been much more experienced than me because I didn't have any men before you, Steve. Vicky, I don't remember. It was so long ago. Every guy remembers every girl he's been with. I've heard this phrase so many times that I know it by heart, and I know Becky wasn't your first. How many were there? 5? 6? More, she asked without backing down. She was 4th, if you really must know, but they all existed before we met. Not all of them, but Becky was probably revenge for what I did that night, right? You can say that it was my fault that you cheated on me, Vicky said, now angry herself. Do you want to know how many nights I thought about that night? When we saw Becky on the street or in the mall and our eyes met, I felt like she was making fun of me. Yes, I was with your man before you, and it was wonderful, she screamed at me. But you were probably drunk too, so when did you realize it was her and not me, Vicky? We weren't married yet, and that made it right? Was it okay to cheat on me because we weren't married yet? And probably after what, 3 months later? I forgave you. We made peace and everything became the same as before. I forgave your stupid mistake, but I never forgot. So the question is, how many more months are you going to make me pay? 1? 2? Never? That's what we're talking about now. She was right. While I didn't agree with her logic, it all came down to what we were going to do in the future. I'm too tired to think or talk anymore, Vicky said, standing up and heading towards the stairs. I won't ask to share your bed tonight because, frankly, I don't want to. We may or may not talk tomorrow, but like you, I can't go on like this anymore. There was no love or any other emotion in her voice, only fatigue and disappointment. I watched her walk up the stairs and disappear into the hallway. I sat in the no more details this morning? Do you want to know how many times we did this or what it was like? Or maybe the great question is, was he better than you? Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you. You just have to ask, she said, putting the bagel in the toaster and crossing her arms, almost challenging me. You already told me that he was better and that he fulfilled every damn fantasy you had, I replied in the same tone. Steve, we had intimacy. We didn't make love. He used me and left. End of story. Did I enjoy it? Yes. Hell yes. Was he better than you? Actually, no. It was just different. And finally, would I do it again? No way in this life, she said, looking me straight in the eyes. After that, silence reigned in the kitchen. We both ate in silence and then just looked at each other. I couldn't get rid of the image of her cheating, no matter how hard I tried, and it seemed like she saw it in my eyes. I'll find a place and move out as soon as possible, she said, breaking the silence. I don't need a house. It's too big. A one-room apartment is enough for me. Are you in a hurry? I said, trying to soften what was happening. Steve, you will never be able to forgive me for cheating on you, and I'm tired of apologizing. I begged and asked for forgiveness, but I've exhausted all my tears and strength, she said, standing up and heading towards the stairs. She didn't say anything else, and I didn't stop her. Her door was locked when I tried to check later that night. I put my ear to the door but didn't hear anything. Again, she disappeared when I finally got up in the morning. I didn't sleep well last night, and things were getting even more out of control. I needed to change something. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Vicky finally returned home. Where have you been all day? I was looking for an apartment, and it seems I found the right one, she said, looking at me, waiting for my reaction. I don't want you to leave. I still love you. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for myself. I need my life back, and I can't do it here any longer. So you're just going to move out and that's it? Throw away 27 years? You threw it away, not me, she said, looking at me with an angry expression. Why don't you call your friend David? He can probably find another woman, especially one he has already tamed. I turned away first. I was already halfway up the stairs when I turned around. If you leave, we're done. There will be no turning back. When she told me to go to hell, I knew it was over. Vicky moved out over the next 3 days. I didn't know and didn't want to know who was helping her, just that it would finally end. If she really wants to be alone, I will help her. In 4 hours, I closed all the credit cards in my name and left them open at my company. I removed her name from all accounts and added our 2 children as second and third parties in case of my incapacity. 3, 2, 1, my cell phone rang, probably not as fast as it seemed, but it seemed to me that it happened instantly. My credit cards aren't working, and I can't access our bank accounts, she screamed into the phone. I told you if you leave, everything will end. Apparently, you thought I was joking. Half of this money is mine. When was the last time you contributed to something other than bills? For the past 3 months, I've been living with a drunk whose only goal was to get completely drunk every day. It's time for you to sort out your life yourself. I hung up. I called my lawyer and told him that Vicky and I were getting a divorce and asked him to hide everything that I could. Whether it was legal or not, I didn't care anymore. For days later, the lawyer called. He threatened and demanded alimony for Vicky. "Listen, I won't give this traitor a dime." "Okay, she cheated on me, and I can prove it." I told him who my lawyer was and that he should only call him. "Tell my wife that I will burn all the money in the fireplace before I give her a penny." And so the struggle began. My children tried to intervene, but we were both at each other's throats and did not listen to anyone. In the end, they told us both that when we were done, we should call them, but until then, not to. I had no idea what Vicky lived on. She probably maxed out her credit card and maybe got some money from her parents. When her father came into my work and scolded me, I told him a little story. When he left, I was still a scoundrel, but at least he understood why. Both Tim and Sue tried to talk to us, but I felt that if Sue had kept a better eye on Vicky, we might not have gone through this mess. I felt sorry for Tim. He was in the middle of all this. We'd have a drink sometimes, and I tried to check with him to see how Vicky was doing, but he said he hadn't seen her, although Sue came by to check on her every couple of days. "When was the last time you actually talked to Vicky?" he asked one evening when we were drinking several glasses. "The day before she moved out." I was ready to cry again, but when she said she was leaving, all bets were off. "Tim, I told her if she left, we were done. She told me to go to hell, and that ended it. I know she still loves you, but you both are making the gap so wide that you may not be able to cross it in the near future. Tim, it's already too wide. Do you know what's the funniest thing? She blames me for our breakup. She said she did it because I cheated on her 2 years before our wedding. Can you believe it? We weren't even married, and I haven't even looked at other girls since then. But apparently, she can't say the same. Steve, she was drunk. Sue keeps telling me that. Tim, she wasn't that drunk. I was given a court order to state where I was putting the money from our savings and checking accounts. I ignored it. I actually burned $500 bills and sent them to her new apartment with a note that she would receive a similar package every day. Apparently, she thought I was serious and set up a meeting between 2 lawyers. I gave her 40% of what was in our savings accounts, less legal fees. It was a couple thousand, which should have lasted her for a while. I started drinking heavily again and started taking taxis instead of driving on my days off. Chuck, my office manager, began to worry about my absence from the office. I gave him power of attorney so he could pay bills and sign paychecks. Steve, there are clients you've had for years who are starting to worry. If you don't shake things up, we'll lose them, he told me. I wasn't going to let my divorce ruin what I'd spent my life building. I returned to work with renewed vigor. I ignored all requests from Vicky and the lawyer. Bills began to mount. When I told him to stop all proceedings and not answer her lawyer's calls, they started calling me again. But my secretary blocked all their calls, and when they tried to come to my office, I was always at lunch. When they finally stopped by my car, I asked Chuck to take me to a motel. It worked, but not for long. Chuck and I were having a drink at Tony's when I saw Vicky walk in with a group of about 8 people. I saw Sue with her, so I assumed they were all friends from the gym. My eyes were glued to her, and I watched her every move. It didn't take her more than an hour to drink 4 or 5 glasses of wine. If she wasn't drunk, she was well on her way. When she started dancing with all the guys, I apparently became jealous, though I didn't know why. Damn, I knew I still loved her, but it looked like she was moving on. He was tall and black, like the ace of spades. I wasn't drunk, but I wasn't sober either. Good evening, Sue, I said as I approached their table. You still seem to be doing a great job taking care of Vicky, just like you did in Tampa, I added as my wife began to stagger back to the table. Steve, why don't you leave? You're drunk, she said as soon as Vicky returned. You must be a pimp or something. Don't worry, she can handle anything you or your brothers can throw at her. She has experience, Sue said, challenging me. Tell them, Vicky. Sue stood up and told me to shut up. The guy stood up for her, and there was a fight. The next thing I knew, I was told I was under anesthesia and strapped to the bed so I couldn't move my head. The man in the white coat told me I was injured and that in a few days, I'd feel better and be like myself again. Great, I'd feel better now if I could remember something that might help. I recognized Randy and Sue, but had no idea who the others were. Apparently, it didn't matter now. It looked like I wasn't going anywhere. It's hard to say how long I slept. Randy and Sue left, but there were still 2 people in my room. I had seen them before but couldn't remember who they were. "Honey, how are you feeling?" asked a beautiful woman holding my hand. I just looked at her. "Dad, it's me, John," another man said as he approached my bed. I just looked at them. My brain still wasn't processing it, but they looked familiar. "Where are Randy and Sue?" I whispered. "Randy will be back soon." "She went to get something to eat," the woman said. I think I knew her, but the boy was unknown to me. "Dad, I'm back," Randy said, holding my hand and kissing it. I must have smiled because she smiled back. "Dad, do you know who these other 2 are?" "One says his name is John, but I'm not sure who that woman is," I said, whispering in her ear. "It's okay. Everything will be restored soon," she said with a tear in her eye. "You just have to get better, you hear?" I smiled at her and kissed her on the cheek. She grabbed the other 2 and left the room. They all came back and looked like they were crying. Maybe they're not telling me something. I got scared and asked my doctor, who finally came after about an hour. "Doctor, what's wrong? Am I dying?" "Only if I mess up the operation, and I never do that," he said with a grin. "You hit your head, and we had to repair the damage. You'll have problems at airport security because you now have a little metal plate in your head. You won't even notice the difference after the stitches heal," he said, releasing my restrictions. "You don't need these anymore. There's still some swelling, and you'll feel a little silly for a couple of days, but after that, you should start feeling like yourself." "What was it like before?" I asked. "I guess you'll have to ask your family about that," he replied. "Randy and the other 2 never left my side. They were with me when I fell asleep and were always there when I woke up. John said he was my son, but I still couldn't remember who this sad woman was. Sue came back that night with some guy I'd never met. I beckoned her to the bed and whispered in her ear, "We are married." She smiled and said no. She called to the sad woman from the edge of the bed, "This is your wife, Vicky. You have been married for 27 years, and this is your son, John. I think you already know Randy. For some reason, honey, how are you feeling?" "Much better. I just wish I could remember something." "Don't worry. The doctor said you should start remembering everything within a couple of days," she said, starting to cry again. I took her hand, kissed her, and asked her to sit next to me. "We have a lot of catching up to do," I said, looking at Sue and John. "Randy wasn't as nice. She told me I've been a real jerk over the last couple of months. Dad, John, and I haven't even talked to you for the last couple of months. You acted like an arrogant idiot, and we were angry with you and Mom. What have we done?" She looked at John, then at Vicky, and then back at me. "Mom will tell you later. Right now, you just need to rest and recover." Gradually, everything started to come back. At least I remembered who all these people were. I vaguely remembered Vicky, but I felt love for her. John was simpler, especially after our conversations, and I began to remember things we had done together in the past. The first time I kissed Vicky, she backed off a little. "Don't worry, honey, I won't break," I told her. She smiled, and I started to feel better, much better. When everyone started leaving around 9 o'clock in the evening, I asked Vicky to stay. She sat in the chair next to my bed and waited for everyone to leave. "I've been a jerk to you these past months, and if that's the case, then I'm sorry," I said, kissing her as she reciprocated. "How can you be angry with such a beautiful woman who never left my side for 27 years? She nodded in response. "Wow, did we get married at 12? "Steve, you could hurt yourself," she said, trying to pull away. "I want my wife to be with me in this bed. I don't care if it's a hospital bed. Wherever I am, you should be with me." I didn't understand why she cried again. "I love you, Steve. You have to believe it," she repeated. A week later, I was discharged, and we headed home. I was as excited as a child with a new bike. Everything seemed new and exciting. The real food was delicious, and my parents came to visit every day. I recognized my father right away, but it took another week before I remembered my mother. Sue came over every other evening or so to check on me and chat with Vicky. Finally, I realized that she was Vicky's best friend, and her husband Tim was mine. My office manager told all my clients about my accident and that I would likely be back at work in about 3 weeks on a part-time basis. Things started going great when I began remembering things that were bothering me. "Steve, we had some problems before your accident, and we were trying to solve them," she said. "Is that why Randy said I was a jerk?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "We both were." "Well, it couldn't be that big of a deal. We're still together, yes? Isn't it?" Vicky said, kissing me again. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen when the phrase "big boy" came into my head again. It was like rewinding a CD as things started coming back into my head, bits and pieces, hundreds of pieces filled my brain. I must have been staring into space when Vicky entered the room. "Steve, are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm just thinking about what to do with you today." "Well, Sue and I are going shopping, and you can come if you want." "Let's see, go shopping with 2 women or call Tim and go on vacation with him," I said. Vicky looked at me and said she would invite Tim over. By the time Tim arrived, I had already collected a lot. "I'll be ready in a minute," I said, grabbing my baseball cap and wallet. "Where do you think you're going?" "We, my friend, are going to have a drink and a long talk." The beer was cold, and the first one ran out quickly. "I missed it," I told Tim, turning my chair to face him. "It's time for you to fill in the blanks." I remembered most of it in the last 2 days, but I still have questions, I said, seeing him become a little uncomfortable. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. "I have no choice. I want my old life back," I told him. I shared what I remembered, and he filled in the remaining gaps. "Do you remember what Vicky did?" Tim asked uncertainly. "What did she cheat on that weekend and move out of the house?" "Yes, I remember all this. She has been my wife more recently than in the last 5 years of our marriage." "What are you going to do now?" "Nothing." "How is this nothing? Won't Vicky suspect that you got your memory back?" "Not if I play dumb. I want to see how this all works out between us. I'll give her hints sometimes to keep her on her toes, and eventually, I'll tell her." "So you're not going to divorce her?" "Are you crazy? I love this woman. I have serious problems with what she did, and we still have to discuss it, but I'm not going to let her go unless my plan fails." "Steve, you're still in." "I know, but I'm going to have the best intimacy of my marriage in the next couple of months," I said, finishing my second drink and ordering a third. I was waiting for Vicky when she returned from shopping. I was grilling steaks and making a salad when she walked through the door. "Steve, I could do that." "I don't want you to overexert yourself," she said, dropping the bags. I saw Victoria's secret bag among the others. "Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how you feel later." Dinner was great, and Randy and John came by to see how I was doing. I told them that the old man was going to live and that they should worry about the school and not about me. Besides, I announced that we had a date tonight and it was time for them to leave. "Dad, I don't need to know that much about this," Randy said, winking at her mom before walking away. I dropped hints from time to time and was now working full-time. I don't know what came over him in the last 2 months. He wants to do it every night and says he remembers us doing things that we never did, Vicky said, blushing. "Vicky, the main thing is, are you happy?" "Yes, it's crazy. But what will happen when he remembers everything? I can't lose him again. Let's not worry about it until it happens, okay?" At 11 o'clock in the evening, I announced that it was time for Vicky and me to go home. She has become such a beast sometimes. I feel like I can't keep up with her. "Maybe I should find her a lover to help me," I said, laughing. Nobody else laughed. "What?" It was a joke. I would never share my Vicky. With that, we left. "When did you regain all your memory?" she asked. "When we woke up a couple of months ago," I replied. "Who else knows?" "Just Chuck and Tim." "Can I ask why you didn't let me know?" "I thought you'd figure it out when I started dropping hints, but you didn't say anything." "Well, the $10,000 question is, Where do we stand now? I'm still here, aren't I? I'm not happy with what happened in Tampa, but it's not a reason for divorce for me, and I never want to hear the words free passage again. We kissed before heading into the shower. I had to fend off the men with a stick, and Tim asked why Sue didn't wear those outfits for him, winking at me. She did it 3 weeks later and looked amazing. We were still working on trust issues, but we were making progress. We were both working on it now, unlike before. Steve and Vicky's story reminds us how difficult but important it is to work on relationships, even after deep wounds. Forgiveness is not an easy road, but sometimes it opens the door to a new beginning. Take care of your loved ones and don't forget that trust is the most precious thing in a relationship. May understanding and love always reign in your home. Thanks for watching. See you for more videos.